Happy Mother's Day, everybody. It's good to see you. It's good to be back here and other places on the YouTubes. Let's go ahead and get a little bit focused on writing to heal, shall we? Indeed, indeed, indeed. Welcome home, my fellow soul bards. It's been a while. It's very good to see you. My name is Jenna O'Malley. Let's talk about writing to heal. So, it is Mother's Day. If you have any comments, please feel welcome to go ahead and add them in chat, live, or comment on the replay. And I have mixed feelings about Mother's Day. Always have. Always have. Kind of was always a day to reflect on mother wounds, even as a child. So I'll warn you in advance, we might touch on that today, but I just sincerely, before we go into the deep dive, wanted to make sure I extend all my love and hugs to every mother out there for sure. I'm not just talking your traditional mom. I'm not just talking your traditional mother. Indeed. I'm talking about those who are mother-like, because you don't need to be female presenting to be mother-like. I do have a friend of mine from high school that all of us would say if we had a group mom, it was him. He's a happily married straight man, but that's his persona even in his marriage. He is the one who mothers. It's part of who he is. He parents. I guess you could non-genderize it. But also to my fellow persons who fight infertility. To my fellow people who have lost a child before or after birth. This day's about you too. It's not just a day of celebration of the concept of motherhood, because if we're not doing that every day, we're kind of failing half of our collective. We're literally failing the female presenting creator portion of the collective. And I think mothers have been societally conditioned to not consider themselves a mom unless it looks good enough to be on a Pinterest board, unless it deserves to be shared on Instagram to viral status. And that's not motherhood. Motherhood is playing baseball with your kids in the middle of a muddy field and them having stories for years to come about you sliding into home plate and ripping your pants open. I love you, Mom. That was my mother with my 3 older brothers when they were little. It leads to, regardless of your mom's status, it leads to people saying things like, you are super kind, you're super creative. That all comes from our mothers. Whatever they are genetically predisposed into giving us, that's kind of what we expect out of not just the mothers in our lives, but anyone, male or female, who reminds us of our mothers. And that's where we start getting a little bit into kind of the focus on healing mother wounds. I think a lot of us came to our mothers at a time when they needed us so that they could learn how to heal something in their lives. And I say this because that's literally, at least for me, why I exist. My mom has 4 older sons, and in the late 80s, she was about to turn 40 years old. She rightfully said, you know what? Menopause is going to hit in the next decade or so. I doubt I'm ever going to have a daughter if I haven't had one at this point. And she was having this conversation to her then best friend. And mind you, her then best friend, who was her mother-in-law from her first marriage, they bonded through grieving the loss of the person that bound them as mother and daughter-in-law, my mom's first husband. And they became thick as thieves best friends, literally helped each other raise their kids. Because he had some younger siblings that were not fully grown yet, and he was the eldest kind of deal. So her mother-in-law literally became her best friend and helped her together. My mother raised her nieces and nephews alongside her sons as a single mom. Happy Mother's Day to you, friend. And my mom's best friend passed away December 12th, something like that. Mid December of 86, Alice passed away from her loss of the fight with cancer. And my mom they lived around the corner from each other. My mom ran Alice's house, took care of her in her final days better than her own kids did. And that's just, they were best friends. My mom admitted I had to marry her son to find my lifelong best friend. And she said, I was so lost between there and the funeral and Christmas. It was a whirlwind because a lot going on. But at the same time, my mother was actively conceiving me during that time and did not know it. You know, I was conceived at a time when my mom was literally grieving, if not one of, then probably the most important person in her life. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be really honest. If it weren't for Alice, I wouldn't know where my mom was today. So I could probably very well say if it weren't for a mother-in-law to a father who is not mine, but is my brother's, it's because of her I'm probably even here. Because just what my mom went through in her 20s as a single mom and a widow would have been enough to make her crack. And I know that she somehow felt that I was a gift to her in return for aiding Alice cross. But at the same time, I'm like, that's a lot of pressure on our relationship as mother and daughter. It really was. Because I always felt this obligation that I had to be her best friend. I wanted to be my mother's best friend, but I wanted to be me. And that's where we get into mother wounding. We're allowed to love our mothers. And good Lord, regardless of the fact that I don't agree with half of what my mother has said to me over the years, I still appreciate her so much for things she has done for me that she didn't have to do. Was she a saint? No, thank God she wasn't, because this world doesn't need mothers who are the old standby traditional motherly figure on a pedestal type. We need queens who are warriors in the streets and ready to thug out, and that was my mom. I'm gonna own up and admit that. Straight hard facts. My mom survived living in inner city Baltimore as a 20-something widow with 3 kids because she part thug. How else could she have done it, right? And sadly, that's the world that the world is forcing mothers to be that way. In an era where they are told, at least my mom's era, because she was born in the late 40s. My mom's a boomer, my brothers are Gen Xers, I'm barely a millennial. By force. I don't want to be. I side more with the Gen Xers, because look who I was raised by, right? And that's the mother we need. The old stereotypical head of the household who just, I'm thinking very Downton Abbey, stereotypical mother head of the household. Now, don't get me wrong. The ladies who run the house at Downton are thugs in their own regard amongst their own societies. Why else would the Dom be played by, well, Maggie Smith? The thug of thugs herself. And It's just a different time. That softness in us as women, as females, as creatives is not valued the way it used to be. And I mean, that's why I was literally talking with Mel in their Mugs and Milestones earlier about this on Power Play Press through my other channel earlier today. It's just like society doesn't want us to be that way. But is it a product of a bygone era, and should we get rid of it? Probably. Some of our mother wounds are generational. My mother did not know how to be a mom to a daughter no more than I think her mom knew how to be a mom to a daughter. And some of you see that pattern in your families. The boys are the favorite, the boys are the favorite, the boys are the favorite. Who else was told, you're a girl, you should be seen, preferably not heard? My parents did not understand in the 90s that that was old fashioned, even though they were being told otherwise by my friends' parents. So, why does it show up in our creative processes then? We've talked about personal bleed here. Why is the wounded mother, instead of mother wound, we'll call it wounded mother archetype? Why is the wounded mother archetype something we as writers thoroughly explore? And I'm asking this because, as much as I uphold maternity and modernity hand in hand with some of my characters, I also have characters in my books who are moms that are thugs and not the good way. Her name's the Baroness Sinclair, and literally they refer to her simply as the Baroness, or if you're an immortal, you know her as the Governess. She's not a good person. We don't even call her by her first and last name proper. But on the other hand, we have a grandmother figure in there who everyone calls a grandmother title. And we all have those people in our lives, to be fair. And it's like, why? We need to help the wounded mother fix herself for herself first. Jennifer, your mom had to be a thug of sorts. She was born in the 50s and then gave birth to a special. See? Yes. Oh my God, yes. My next door neighbor had this going on right as a little kid growing up. The family that lived next door to us, their youngest child, I assume Buddy is still alive. I'm going to give him his credit in his favor. Buddy's mom gave birth to him literally in like 78, 79. And he had Down syndrome. He lives life because the way he does because of Down syndrome and the way people in his era were treated. His mom could throw down and not lay a finger on you. She was not helicopter protective of him. She was, but in the right ways. Like, he, unlike many people whom have similar symptoms and diagnosis, he can live by himself. Why? Because mom said, I'm not going to be around here, and your siblings are not going to be put that responsibility when I'm not here. And a lot of moms had this thrown on them in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It wasn't, I would venture to say, as a former educator, it wasn't until the late 90s, early 2000s when IEP law got really hard solidified into play to where a lot of these services got more accessible, specifically to single mothers. I'll admit that. So it's changing. Not fast enough. There's so many wounded mothers out there, and they are rightfully, truthfully doing their best. Why can't we give them the support they deserve to heal themselves first? I'm not Christian, but I grew up in a Catholic church, and one thing that I always heard growing up was the wife can only be as good of a mother to the kids so long as somebody is feeding her inner creator correctly from the outside as a spouse. I.e., he can still have to work a full-time job and help run house, and you keep all those in play. But what is the spouse, what are the children doing to make sure that mom is not a martyr? I do not ever expect any mom to be a martyr for your kid. It is in your nature. You were programmed to protect your creation, just like we writers want to go to our book babies and be like, I love you. I want to shake you. That is natural to us as mothers, for those of us who are female, or female living in our female embodiment, I should say. It's very natural to us to have that dichotomy live parallel in our lives. But unless we are given the chance and the stability to live beyond that for ourselves, hello, Moo, can we truly be good mothers? It puts a lot on the male collective who supports us to go, oh, so you mean the old-fashioned relationship had something to it? A little bit. But in return, the wife has to also make sure that the husband or whomever, if it's LGBTQI representation, the other spouse needs to make sure that the feminine and masculine on the other person's end gets fed. So this is why when people like on celebrity talk shows, they get asked the question, who's more important? Who comes first, the wife or kids? The correct answer is always the spouse. Has to be. Why? So the kids know what to look for when they go looking for a spouse too. With that being said, to all my wounded mothers out there, no matter what your wound is, whether it be because you and your mom or dad or whomever in your family didn't quite get along, or if because, like me, your own female reproductive organs are making decisions for you that you don't like. Mother's Day is meant to be a day of not just celebration, but reflection on what truly, truly we can do to uplift anyone who has an ounce of feminine energy inside of them. Father's Day comes later. We'll worry about the masculine collective then. Until otherwise, this has been one of our tougher, rougher, more pull out the dagger conversations. And whether or not we put the dagger there ourselves. Take care of you. I'll see you around on my other channel next time, tomorrow, more like. And then we'll be back here. More cup of positivity and riffing off of Wednesday, tarot cards and things on Thursday. You've been worth it from the beginning.